Hello and welcome to a new MTGCardmarket.com constructed video series, this time modern again. Today I'm gonna pilot some sweet old school style zoo deck that I had brewed quite a while ago and recently revisited and played a bunch with. I mean, it might not be the best deck in the format, but it seemed pretty viable. And it's also a pretty nice and fun deck to play if you like aggressive decks. So I figured I'll make a video with it for people that are looking for something more old school and more traditionally aggressive for the current format that is so full of combo and combo-ish decks. Even the aggressive decks are basically combo decks. So for the sake of diversity and nostalgia, I'll bring you a very traditional, as I have called it, Zaito Zoo style medium-sized zoo deck. So let's take a look at the deck real quick. So the deck has the 12 best aggressive 1-drops that the Naya colors can provide. 4 Loam Lion, 4 Curdape, 4 Wild Nakadal. Next we have the 2-drops, 4 Tarmogoyf for sure, since it is the best 2-drop in the format. And the second 2-drop usually is some kind of reasonably disruptive creature that also has decent stats. My creature of choice here is Ghazali Bright Mage. Alternatives could be stuff like the Thalia that I'm running in the sideboard, or for example Edathorn Canonist or Gaddock Teague, just depending on the format and what the metagame calls for. And this guy seems like the most powerful and most flexible main deck choice to me in this format. It can kill Nexus against Infect, can kill all the key cards against Affinity except Edge Champion. It can kill Ensnaring Bridge against Lantern Control. It can do some mitigation against Wormcoil Engine if it really comes down to that, against Tron. And it also provides utility if its sacrifice ability is not relevant, by being a 2-mana 2/2 that provides Exalted either to another attacker or to itself, making it a 2-mana 3/3, which is pretty solid in its own right. So it's just a pretty flexible card that gives us some outs to problematic cards in the main deck, and also against cards from more fringe decks that you don't face often but are really happy to have answers for main deck if you do, like Bogles for example and stuff like that. Next we have 1 3-drop, the one and only Knight of the Reliquary. She is and always has been an all-star in Naya colored decks, so same here, since this is not a super aggressive flow to the ground all 1-drops and Tarmogoyf zoo deck, and more of a medium-sized traditional Saito style zoo deck. There's room for 4 3-drops, and Knight of the Reliquary is usually the best choice here, especially with all the fetch lands that a deck like this usually runs. The last creature is less of a creature and more of a trick or spell. It's Gorklan Rampager. Against slower decks, like control decks, he often gets hardcast even, as a decent threat that doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. But against most other decks, it speeds up the clock, kills annoying blockers in combat, and pushes damage through stuff like Edge Champion for example. Just a really nice card that often lets you get them dead the turn before they kill you, where they otherwise could jump block your Knight or your Goyf for example to stay alive, and then you just Gorklan Rampager and they die. And the spells are pretty straightforward for Pass to Exile, for all the problematic creatures, opposing Tarmogoyfs, Wormcoil Engines, stuff like that, or a lethal Infect creature in response to their last pump spell, where Lightning Bolt wouldn't be enough. Then for Lightning Bolt, the best removal spell / burn spell in the format, can kill cheap stuff early on, but also help us finish off the opponent. And because 1 mana removal for small creatures is really useful right now with decks like Infect, Burn, Affinity, and so on around, some more Seal of Fires as downgraded lightning bolts that even sometimes have some upside, because the fact that you can just play it and have it lie around to protect you from an Infect kill or plating hit, for example, is pretty useful, and it also grows the Tarmogoyf. So all in all, a pretty decent additional burn spell to give us more early interaction, to slow down the game just enough for a deck like this to win the game before the opponent does. And yeah, the mana base is super straightforward, 21 lands, 12 in-color fetch lands, 1 of each basic, the 5 duals, focusing on the red duals, and 1 colorless land to go and get with Knight of the Reliquary. This might need some explanation. Usually with this deck, this is better than Kasich Wolfrun, since for the activation cost of Skarg, the Rage Pits, Kasich only gives trample. And even for a mana more, it only gives +1/+0 in trample, while this, for 2 mana, already gives +1/+1 in trample, which actually matters a lot, because the 1 extra toughness that Kasich can't give can protect a creature from Lightning Bolt mid-game. That has happened before. It can help a Gorkland Rampager trample over a Tasigur or an opposing Tarmogoyf. That also has happened to me just yesterday, for example, where I attacked into a Tasigur with my Rampager and they had to block, so I just pumped it and Tasigur died. And my Gorkland Rampager lived, whereas with Kasich it wouldn't have. Just a really nice tool that adds some combat help to the deck, more so and cheaper than Kasich would, so that's why Skarg over Kasich. Last we have the sideboard, 2 Chain to the Rocks for additional big guy removal, cheap, efficient. Have to be a bit careful with this against black-green based decks, because they can blow you out, but it's still usually worth it having it, because it is a very efficient way to deal with the big blockers early on. 2 Stony Silence, mainly against Affinity, can also potentially come in against Tron, and will definitely come in against Lantern Control. Might even be some fringe decks where it really can try to. 2 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, against spell-heavy decks to slow them down a bit and buy some more time and make it harder for them to efficiently interact with us. 2 Surgical Extraction and 1 Grafdigger's Cage against Dredge, mostly, to contain their army of unearthed creatures just long enough to close the game. 1 Lavamancer against all kinds of decks with small creatures that we want to interact with, Infect, Affinity, Elves, stuff like that. Cord and Company decks. There's plenty of decks where this guy is good. It's also often better than, say, a Pass to Exile against control decks, so you can bring it in there as well. 3 Molten Rain, especially against Scapeshift decks like Red-Green Titan, regular Scapeshift, control decks, but also on the play against mid-range decks like Jund and Abzan, where this card can really throw them off their game long enough to just die before they can even really get into the game. And yeah, 2 Shatterstorm, mostly against Affinity, because Edge Champion is a really big problem for this deck, and also a nice card to have against Lantern Control, because once you cast that, the game should usually end right there. Yeah, that's it for the deck list. It's pretty straightforward, a lot of fourths, just a very focused strategy Basically all good cards with some role players like Seal of Fire and Bright Mage, basically to give us enough interaction and things to hold the strategy together and hold its own against faster decks. And yeah, alright. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to explain cards and choices further if that wasn't clear yet. And yeah, see you in a moment for match 1 of the competitive league.